Well, tonight we have come to the end of our You Asked For It series. And so tonight, Titus and I together are going to be addressing a topic that you guys have asked us in so many different ways, whether that was through our texter, whether that's been in person, whether that's through a small group leader, whatever it might be. And so we're going to be addressing that question tonight. And like every other week, we've got this number on the screen, and if you have questions about what we're talking about tonight, not questions about like Revelation or the end of time or all the other stuff you guys text in other times, but if you have questions about what we're talking about tonight, text them in throughout the evening, and when we're done, we'll do our best to get to some of those. But the question we want to look at tonight is, how do I talk to people of other faiths? How do I talk to people of other faiths? And we hear that question all the time through so many different ways. We have students who ask us, how do I talk to an atheist? How do I talk to a Muslim? How do I convert a Buddhist to Christianity? All these different questions we hear all the time. So what we wanted to do tonight was kind of cover this topic in a broad way and give you guys some helpful tips that apply to anyone you're talking to, no matter what their faith looks like. And so what Titus and I want to do tonight, what our goal is to teach you guys how to have a conversation. And so Titus and I are sitting here at this cafe table. It's a little tight and cozy up here, but we're making it happen. Yeah. We're sitting at this cafe table. We both got our coffee because we want you guys to see what it looks like to have a conversation with a person of a different faith, how to converse with other people. So tonight we're calling this, let's call this the Chris and Titus do's and don'ts of talking to people of other faiths.
It's a great title.
The do's and don'ts, yes.
Great title.
So if you're taking notes, which we encourage you to do, that's why we leave those note sheets out for you, these are some things you can write down to help you. They're going to be on the slides behind us as well. So number one, don't isolate. That's what we call this. When you are talking to someone of a different faith, don't isolate. And the truth is, coming from us as student pastors, a lot of you guys ask this question, but the truth is, every one of you should be asking this question. And the reason is because if you claim to follow Jesus, this is not an option for you. Like, you don't get to choose whether or not you want to talk to people about Jesus who don't know him. But our problem is, what we like to do, and I'm just as guilty of it, is we like to stay inside of our comfort zone. We make friends when we come to church and student ministry here, and those are the people we hang out with when we're here. Sometimes those are the people that we hang out with outside of church in our homes, and we start to get this comfortable group of people, and we don't ever want to go outside of that group. And so if the reason that you're not asking this question, how do I talk to people of other faiths, if the reason you're not asking that is because you don't know anyone of other faiths, that's a problem. Like, that's a problem that you need to address. Because every person, if we're honest, every person who does not follow Jesus is a person of another faith. And so if we choose as Christians to isolate ourselves from those people, we're disobeying the commands that Jesus gave us to go out and make disciples, to tell other people about him. So don't isolate. Maybe your first step in talking to someone of another faith needs to be actually being around a person of a different faith. And that may be a big step for you, but the first thing you need to do is don't isolate.
Yeah, so the flip side of that, if the idea is don't isolate, then do relate. Do relate. The idea here, just to put it really clearly so that you aren't confused about what we are or aren't saying, is this. You should have friends that aren't believers, okay? You should have friends that don't believe the same stuff about God and the Bible as you do. Now, your closest friends, I really think, should be believers, people that you can share life with, that are going to hold you accountable to live for Jesus. Those are your foundational relationships. But you should also have friends that are Hindus or Mormons or whatever. Like, you should just have friendships with people that don't believe the same way that you do. And that makes sense, right? How else can you impact non-believers unless it's done in the context of a relationship? Did you ever notice that you don't listen to what people have to say? I mean, just think about your own life. You don't listen to what people have to say unless you know them pretty well and have a connection. Preaching to people, yelling at people who don't trust you probably isn't going to get much done for the kingdom. But being friends with, or at least being friendly to, people who don't believe the same thing as you, that's the best first step at influencing them for Jesus. So definitely do relate.
So the question with that might be, what does it look like to relate? Like, how do I ask questions to start to build a relationship, to start to relate? And so maybe we start by what it does not look like.
All right, what does it not
Yeah,
look like, Chris?
so maybe we're having a conversation here, and I'm a
Can I
Christian.
be a Buddhist?
You can be whatever you want to be. Is
All right,
that
I'm a
what you've
Buddhist.
settled on, a Buddhist?
Yeah, I'm a
Okay.
Buddhist.
So, what if I lead the conversation with Titus like this? Titus, why do you hate God?
Yeah, that's probably
Seriously,
not really.
Titus, why don't you believe in God? Don't you know that if you're not a Christian, Titus, you're going to hell?
Yeah. Look, this is totally staged, right? I know what he's going to say, but even with the way that he's saying it, I'm leaning back in my chair, and I knew it was coming.
Yeah, and those are not good questions to lead with.
Not so much.
And you would think that that's obvious, but
Right.
Titus, maybe you can share how that's not so obvious.
Yeah, it's not so obvious. Here's the thing. Are you talking about the story I have? Yeah.
I am. I think you should share that with me.
When I was like your age, I think I was in 7th grade, is when I really started getting serious about my relationship with Jesus. And there was a girl in my class named Virginia. And Virginia was not a believer. And I was really passionate about the Lord because I was 12 and I thought I knew everything. And I would go to school, right? We would walk in, we would go in the classroom, we would put our stuff away, and then we were allowed to like go to the gym and hang out until the bell rang or whatever. And every day we got there about the same time, and we'd put our stuff away, and as we walked out, like almost every day, I would look at Virginia and I would say stuff like, Virginia, if you don't become a Christian, you're going to hell. Virginia, why don't you believe in Jesus? If you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to end up in hell for all eternity. And that's how I just acted. And it may not surprise you to learn that Virginia never became a Christian.
Right, and it's not like the things that you are saying are untrue.
Right.
But when you approach a conversation and you immediately jump in with that without taking any time to relate, it doesn't come across right, and it's really never effective. And
Right.
so, what if your conversation went something more like this?
Let's try it.
Are you still a Buddhist this time?
Yeah, I'm still Buddhist.
Still Buddhist? Okay. So, Titus, have you always lived here in Katy?
No, actually, I moved here from the St. Louis area about 5 years ago.
Get out of here. Guess what?
What?
I also used to live in St. Louis before I came here.
That's crazy, dude.
We have that in common.
Yeah, are you a
That's
Cardinals fan?
I'm a huge Cardinals fan.
Love
You like
the St.
baseball?
Louis Cardinals. Yeah, I love baseball.
Yeah? What else do you like to do?
Man, I love drinking coffee. Kind of fun hanging out
It's
here
like
with you,
this
drinking
conversation
coffee.
was meant to be.
Like movies, like books. Love all kinds of stuff. How about you?
Do you see the difference here? This is relating. Like, we see that we have things in common, and we start by learning about each other's lives, and that starts to lower the walls so that we build trust between us. And once we begin to build that trust between us, that's when we can start to go into some deeper and more complex things. And so if I haven't even cared enough about Titus to learn anything about him as a person, do you really think he's going to listen to what I have to say about God?
No.
No. So don't isolate. Do relate.
Do relate.
And next, don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions. In my mind, this directly relates to don't isolate. And the reason is because most of the time when people make assumptions about, for example, a Muslim, they're doing that because they don't actually know any Muslims. Like, most people who assume that all Muslims are terrorists have never had a real conversation with a Muslim person before. Like, they have never met the awesome couple that you and I met that
Right.
own the little Philly cheesesteak restaurant in Houston, and we bought some chairs from them for the sound.
Yep.
Like, that kind of stuff happens when you isolate. You start to make assumptions. And so when you go into a conversation with a person of a different faith and you make assumptions about what all of those people are like, you go into a conversation and assume all Muslims, all Buddhists, all whatever are like this, believe this. Your conversation isn't going anywhere. And think about that as a Christian. How much do you like that when other people do that to you? When people say, well, all Christians are hypocrites and bigots and hateful toward everyone else who doesn't believe the same things that they do. That's not true, and when people say that, that doesn't make you want to lower your walls either to have a conversation. So if we want to be able to talk to someone of a different faith, we can't make assumptions.
So the opposite of that is do your research. Like don't allow yourself to make those assumptions, and instead do some research about people that believe other things. The best way to avoid all those generalizations is to just figure out what other religions believe or what atheists believe. This can happen personally as you relate to people who don't believe the same stuff as you, but it also can happen using all kinds of tools that exist in our world, okay? On my shelf in my office right now, I could walk and get them. I have 2 copies of the Quran, all right? I have a Book of Mormon. I have 2 textbooks that are both about this thick on the theology of Hinduism. I have a book that's probably, 350, 400 pages long that outlines every major world religion. I have a Book of Mormon. I've met and talked to rabbis. I know Chris has met and done the same. I've been in chat rooms where atheists present their case of why they believe what they do. I've personally visited a mosque and a Hindu temple and a Buddhist temple. And I've done those things on purpose. Now, here's what I don't want you to hear me saying, all right? I'm not saying it's not important that you know what you believe. In fact, it may be that at your age, you want to be very selective about the things that you study and the ways that you do the research into other religions. It's important that you have a solid understanding of your own faith, but it's also essential, if you want to be able to talk to somebody of another faith, that you know what it is they believe and understand that not every Hindu is the same. There's as much disagreement amongst atheists as there is amongst believers on certain finer points of what they believe. There's great online sources out there. Some of you guys have discovered those on your own. There's a website called the Joshua Project that goes into different people groups and their religions. There's charts. Google it. There's charts of every major world religion and how they're distinct from one another. Study that stuff. Familiarize yourself with that stuff. Then you can get to the point where you can use other people's beliefs and conversations with them as a launch pad into sharing what you believe with them.
So next for don'ts, this is like the biggest one for me.
It's a biggie.
Yeah.
It's a biggie.
Don't make it a debate. Don't make it a debate. See, this is the one that gets Christians into trouble a lot and causes any doors that maybe were open for you to actually share your faith in Jesus with someone else. It causes those doors to get shut immediately. Now, I'm not saying that debate like in itself is bad. Some of you maybe are on debate team. Titus and I have debates in our offices about various things all the time. But here's what I am saying. Maybe you're nerdy like me, and sometimes you like watch videos of debates on YouTubes or whatever like that. When was the last time you watched a debate that was between a creationist and an evolutionist, or a debate between a Christian, a Muslim, and a Jew, where like the Muslim and the Jew left the debate being like, you know what, you're right. Like, I'm a Christian now. I left this debate becoming a Christian. That doesn't happen because when we debate, it causes us to get defensive. So we enter the conversation trying to prove someone wrong instead of trying to build a relationship. And we don't listen to what the other person says because we're just thinking about how to argue against whatever just came out of their mouth. We're not seeking to understand. And you may not have experienced this before, but if you have someone who only ever wants to debate your Christian beliefs, maybe you have a person at school or a friend that's like that, all they ever do is want to debate and argue against what you believe. Do you want to talk to that person? No, you go out of your way to avoid them. And that goes both ways. As Christians, if we believe that we have found truth and we want to share that truth, we usually want to speak out against lies, but if all you're looking to do is debate, you're never going to get anywhere talking to another person of a different faith. So instead, what should we do, Titus?
I think this time I want to be, in a second, I want to be an atheist.
Okay.
But instead of debating, what we want to do is make this a conversation. All right, it's similar to relating. But instead of, when you finally get that open door to share, don't turn it into a debate where you're trying to prove somebody else wrong. Just have a conversation, okay? Listen, find common ground. Let the other person share what they think. Affirm them instead of arguing with them. So we're gonna kind of set that up. You're gonna be the Christian again,
Okay.
but I'm gonna be an atheist this time.
Okay.
All right. No more of that
so-
Buddhism for me.
So this would be an example
this
of
goes
a
nowhere.
conversation where
Don't do this.
We're just debating.
We're just debating.
Okay.
You go first.
Titus, if it's true that atheists don't believe in absolute truth, like you guys don't believe that there's things that are true for all people all the time because you don't believe that there's a God who sets what truth is, then do you believe that's true? Absolutely. If you say that there's no truth
There's no
because
absolute truth.
everything's relative, how can you say that? Absolutely. You know what? Why don't you just let me list off every single proof of why I think that God is real and why you're wrong?
Yeah, don't do that. And don't, because here's what, I've seen that, and here's how an atheist usually responds. That's what I hate about Christians, right? They're always up for a fight. They're always out to prove that they're right and that we're wrong. Religion has always been about fights. You've got a God in the Old Testament that commands genocide and is bloodthirsty because all that Christianity is about is a fight. You've got the power of the Roman Empire in the early Christian centuries, during the Crusades, even all the modern day conflict going on in the Middle East, Christian versus Muslim. Religion is just a bloodbath, and I want no part of it.
So see, in this conversation, from the very first question, this conversation was going nowhere. Now, we're both defensive. All we care about is proving that we're right instead of trying to understand the other person. Like, I didn't ask Titus a single question where I was
Right.
being genuine,
Right.
where I was actually concerned about understanding where he's coming from. I was just asking questions trying to
trick
trap
him.
him
Yep.
so that I can prove him wrong. And for a lot of us, even if we're not like as harsh and extreme as we just were, for example, like that's the motive that a lot of times we enter a conversation with someone of another faith with, of, well, my motive is just to trap you and to prove that you're wrong and I'm right. But what would it look like to have an actual productive conversation? Maybe it would look something like this.
Still an atheist, right here.
Okay. Still a Christian as well.
Yeah.
So, Titus, what actually is it that atheists believe? Like, I would really be interested in learning more about your perspective.
Sure, man. Atheists basically believe there is no God. We don't have a deity that explains things for us. We don't believe there's enough evidence for the belief that there is a God that's in control of all this. That's what it means to be an atheist.
So, what would you say are maybe some things that Christians tend to assume about atheists that are wrong? And what are maybe some questions you have about Christianity?
Sure. Well, I think Christians a lot of times assume all atheists are bad people, and that's not true. I've got a lot of friends that are really great people that just don't believe in a God. They want to make the world a better place, but they don't have the motivation of a deity telling them that they should do that. As far as questions that I have about Christianity is I don't understand exactly how a person could just bank their whole life and even their eternity on something that they don't know for sure. That's always confused me about Christians.
So see, when we start to talk like that, the conversation goes a lot smoother, right?
It totally does. And if you have a relationship with the person, it's even easier. And I've had conversations with atheists that go just like that. Nobody gets mad. I've got a friend that lives out in San Diego, and he's kind of a missionary out there, and he sends me newsletters. And he told me this story in one of his newsletters. He said, Tuesday I was sitting at a table at a local coffee place, and since it was crowded, a young student doubled up with me at the table. I was running behind. I knew I should leave, but I also knew God doesn't just sit people at my table for no reason. Listen to this. His name was Muhammad. He was a young Somali studying to be a radiologist. He saw my monster truck-sized Bible, and that opened up a conversation about our respective faiths. I told him about my conversion and how Jesus changed my life, my mind, my heart, continues to guide me and teach me each day. He was really amazed, admitted he didn't have any sincere Christian friends. Did you hear that? He admitted he didn't have any sincere Christian friends. Why didn't that dude have any sincere Christian friends? I offered to share with him one of the most important distinctions between our faiths, because our faiths have a lot in common, but there are important differences. He agreed, and I began. And he went on to talk to this young man. And the thing is, my friend, his name is Jake, he did his research, right? He did not make it a debate. He asked for permission to share. I don't know if you noticed that in the story, but that's huge. And then he did one more thing that was really important, because the young Somali student did not become a Christian that day. And this is the last thing I want to share with you, is he was patient. He didn't expect immediate results.
Yes, so that's the last don't for tonight, is don't expect immediate results. And this is sometimes the hardest thing, because when we have started a relationship with Jesus and we've experienced his love and salvation, we desperately want other people to experience that as well. And when it doesn't happen right away, sometimes it's really easy for us to get discouraged, and it's easy to give up. And so when talking to a person of a different faith, although anything's possible, and you never know how someone might respond to Jesus, you need to know that they are probably not going to decide to become a Christian the first time that you ever talk to them. Like, you need to know that the faith that they have, it may be all they ever know. Like, they may have been raised with that their entire life. It may be something that their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles believe. And we can't think that that is going to change because of a 15-minute conversation. That's just not going to happen. Like a little while back, I went to a Shabbat service at a synagogue here in Houston, and I met the rabbi there, and I spent some time talking to her afterward and just asking her some questions just about what she believes and kind of focusing on building a relationship there. And I followed up with her some since and asked about talking more and getting coffee. But one thing that I have to remember is she has devoted her life to studying, following, and teaching Judaism, and she's not going to decide to become a Christian the first time that she meets me at a Shabbat service that she is leading. Like, that's just not how it works. But if that's what I'm expecting, like if I'm expecting immediate results, it's going to be really easy for me to get discouraged and give up quickly. But we can't do that.
No, so the opposite of that, and what we want to encourage you with tonight, is to be patient, okay? Don't expect immediate results. Do be patient. Continue the conversation. Ask questions. Listen. Be kind. Be friends. Pray like crazy for that individual. Realize that it may be your role simply to plant seeds in their life, to be a great example of what Christians are. Maybe that's all my friend Jake was, the first sincere Christian that Muslim young man ever met. You may simply redefine what a Christian is for somebody. Perhaps before they knew you, they only knew Christians as jerks and debaters and judges and harsh. Maybe you'll be the first person to slow down and form a friendship and ask questions and not be pushy. And that's a good thing, but you got to be patient. You got to pray for that person. Ask God to move in their hearts. Make it a habit to pray for them every single day. Pray before and after you get together as friends at Jamba Juice or Starbucks or whatever. Write their name down where you will see it often to remind you to pray for them. Set an alarm on your phone as a reminder to pray for them. Pray for opportunities to share more, and pray for God to do his good work through you or in spite of you, whatever it takes. Remember that God converts people. We just faithfully love them and point them towards Jesus. By being patient instead of impatient, by having a conversation instead of a debate, by doing your research instead of making assumptions, and by having relationships instead of isolating ourselves, we will be more effective in talking to other people of different faiths and pointing them towards Jesus. We got anything good that came in while we were chatting on this?
I think that there's two questions that would be good for us to address from this before we leave.
Cool.
Okay, so the first one, I think that we talked about this some, but I think we could talk about it a little more explicitly. How would you answer the question, Titus, how do we even bring this up?
Sure.
How do we bring up a conversation about what we believe with someone who believes something different?
Where I've landed on this, because this used to be really awkward for me when I was a teenager, because I didn't have a lot of Christian friends, is if you are friends with someone, it will naturally come up. All right? They will notice something about you that's different, or they'll just ask you what you did over the weekend. Right? Tomorrow at school, somebody will ask you what you did tonight. When you get home later, somebody will text you and ask you what you did tonight. And it comes up naturally for you to share. So just bring it up. Just bring it up. I will say this one thing, though. When somebody notices something different about you, and if you're living like Jesus, they will, take the opportunity to say something. I've shared this story before, but I remember in 9th grade, I was sitting in my locker before the bell rang, and I had a buddy sitting next to me. We played basketball together, all that stuff. And he just noticed that I didn't cuss. That's it. He's like, why don't you cuss? And the reason I didn't cuss, if I'm honest, was because I had become a Christian, and that was just something that by God's grace I stopped doing. All right? But I didn't say that. I just said, like, I don't know, I don't want to cuss. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know, I just don't cuss. I just don't cuss. Like, he just asked me why I didn't, he just asked me to give a reason for why I live differently than everybody else, and I didn't take advantage of it. So if you're living differently, it will come up in the context of your relationship with people. It's going to come up. And so just be bold and share.
And something that I think I would add to that is take advantage of the opportunities that we give you. Like next week, we're having this event we've been talking about forever now, Now You See Me. We're not just doing that event so that you guys can come here and have fun. Like, we want you guys to come here and have fun, but it's something easy that you can invite a friend to that starts a conversation. You can say, hey, we got this cool thing going on at our church, Black Lights, Illusionists, whatever, come check it out. And that's really easy to start a conversation. Hey, well, why do you even go to church anyways? Or, oh, hey, like, those guys that were on stage, Chris and Titus, what do they do? Like, what do you guys do other weeks when you're here? That's really easy to start a conversation. Oasis. We don't just do Oasis for you. In fact, if we're really honest, you guys are like a lower priority of why we do Oasis. We do Oasis for the people who aren't here, for your friends who don't know Jesus, because this is something you can invite them to. And we give you guys an excuse to not even have to start the conversation, because we stand up here and talk about Jesus, and your friend can ask you, what are they even talking about up there? What does that even mean? And the conversation has just been started for you. We give you guys all kinds of opportunities to start those conversations if you would just step out and invite a friend.
Right on.
One more question, then we'll go. I think this is a really good question. Some people have people of other faiths in their life who are an authority figure, like a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, whatever. How would maybe, if at all, you go about that differently since they're an authority figure instead of a peer?
Sure. Well, I think you have to be respectful, right? Because you're not going to get very far if you start by taking them off, right? So I think you need to be respectful. I think asking questions is a good way to go in that scenario. Instead of coming at that by explaining what you think in like a bossy, militant kind of way, or arguing or debating or whatever, just ask questions. We had a bunch of students at my old church who had a teacher who was famously atheist. Famously atheist. Every kid in the school knew they were an atheist. But our kids just talked to him, just asked him questions. And we actually did a thing at our church where we invited him, and I invited a friend of mine that was a preacher to come to our, basically the equivalent of Oasis, and they sat on a stage like this, and we had them talk about their different faiths, okay? And they had a conversation, but it started with those kids, with those authority figures, asking questions. Hey, why do you believe this way? What is it that you think that makes you believe this? And that respectful tone eventually led to, he knew all those students got him to come to our church. I don't think he's a Christian to this day, but there was a conversation that began where he heard respectfully from believers in a way that a lot of other kids in his classroom that were loud and bossy and sort of like holier than thou weren't real effective in reaching him. So I think when it's an authority figure in your life that's not a believer, ask a lot of questions, be patient, be prayerful, be respectful, and understand that they are an authority figure in your life, even if they're not a believer, so they need to be respected. That's especially true if you have unbelieving parents, okay? You can talk to your parents about it, obviously, but be real respectful of them as you go about trying to point them towards Jesus.